The morning I came home from the hospital, I stood in my own doorway and smelled her perfume before I saw a single thing out of place. Chanel No. 5, heavy and sweet and everywhere, the way a presence lingers when it has moved through a space, slowly and deliberately and without permission. I had been gone 12 days. 12 days in a hospital bed, 12 days of machines and medication, and a body that had turned unfamiliar on me without warning. And in those 12 days, while my husband sat beside me terrified and exhausted and running on nothing, his mother had used a spare key, an old document, and 30 years of patience to do something I still have to say out loud sometimes just to believe it happened. She transferred my business into her own name, not managed it, not checked on it, transferred it, legally, while I was sedated, while an IV ran into my arm, while I was too unconscious to stop her. And when I came home and smelled that perfume and knew before I could explain how I knew, I set my bag down, I made tea, and I did not say a single word, because I had already decided exactly how this was going to end. My name is Samantha Brown. I am 34 years old, and I need you to understand what I had built before I tell you what she tried to take, because the business was never just a business. It was the proof that I could do something entirely on my own, without anyone's help, without anyone's permission, without anyone's belief in me except mine. I started Spotless by Samantha at 27 years old with a 2009 Honda Civic that burned oil on the highway, and $40 in a business account I opened on a Tuesday afternoon after my shift ended at the receptionist job I had been working for 3 years. I kept a handwritten notebook with every client's name, their dog's name, what cleaning products they reacted badly to, and their children's birthdays. I sent handwritten thank you cards after every first appointment. I showed up early. I stayed late. I drove home smelling like other people's homes and sat at my kitchen table going through invoices until midnight and got up and did it again. I reinvested every dollar for 3 years before I paid myself a real salary. By the time I was 34, I had 6 employees, 2 commercial contracts with downtown office buildings, a waiting list that stretched 3 months, 6 women who showed up every morning because I had built something real enough to show up for, and Tom's mother had watched every single year of it from the front row. Gloria is 61 years old, retired. She has an immaculate house, a church group she runs, and a way of being helpful that always left you feeling slightly in debt before you had accepted anything. She is the kind of woman who rearranges your throw pillows when she visits and then tilts her head like she is trying to remember if they were always that way, who compliments your cooking immediately after mentioning that Tom's grandmother made it differently, who offers to help in ways that function more like audits than gestures. She had questions about my business. She always had questions, dressed up as concern, dressed up as interest, but underneath them, always the same current running. You work so hard, Samantha. Don't you ever want to slow down? What happens to all of this if something happens to you? You have it set up properly? Tom worries, you know. He just doesn't say it. I answered politely every single time. I thought she was nosy. I thought she was the kind of woman who needed to be central to everything happening around her. I thought I understood what I was dealing with. I did not understand at all. She was not making conversation. She was learning everything she needed to know. If you have ever had someone in your life who asked about your finances a little too often, or your documents, or what would happen to your things if something happened to you, keep watching. Because what she did with that information is something nobody talks about openly enough, and you need to hear the full picture. It was a Tuesday in February. Tom and I had just finished dinner. I remember it was pasta. I remember the dishwasher was running. I was about to sit down with my invoices when a pain hit my lower abdomen, so sudden and so violent that I was on the kitchen floor before I registered that I was falling. I do not remember calling out for Tom. I do not remember the ambulance. I woke up 2 days later with his face above mine and the specific dry, recycled air smell of a hospital room that gets into your hair and does not leave. Ruptured ovarian cyst, emergency surgery, complications that turned a single procedure into 12 days. I was completely unreachable for the first 4. No phone, no decisions, no way to know what was happening outside those walls. Tom was at the hospital almost the entire time, holding himself so still and so steady in the way that people who love you do when they are terrified and do not want you to carry their terror on top of your own. He was not sleeping. He was not eating properly. He was a man running on fear and the specific determination of someone who has decided falling apart is simply not an option right now. Gloria arrived on day 1. She brought food. She managed the house. She gave Tom something solid to lean against during those first hours when nobody knew how serious it was going to get. And I want to be exact about this because the truth matters. In those early days, she was present in a way that looked like love. And then on day 2, she asked Tom one question. Do you want me to check on Samantha's business? Just to make sure nothing falls through the cracks while she's here? Tom, exhausted, scared, not sleeping, said 3 words. Okay, Mom, thanks. He will think about those 3 words for a long time. Gloria already had a spare key to our house. We'd given it to her years ago. She knew the layout. She knew where everything lived. She'd been inside that home office more times than I could count, standing in the doorway making conversation while I worked, glancing at the desk, at the shelves, at the second drawer where I kept the blue accordion folder with my business documents. She had never mentioned noticing it. She'd never forgotten it either. Inside that folder was a document from 3 years earlier, a form I had filled out when I briefly added Tom as an emergency business contact. Outdated, never meant to transfer anything, but it had both our signatures on it and my full business information, and a notary stamp. Gloria took it out of my home while my husband was sitting at my hospital bedside, holding my hand. I still do not know exactly what she told the notary she found. What I know is that she used that document to file an amendment with the state, an amendment that changed the primary owner of Spotless by Samantha, from Samantha Michelle Brown to Gloria Ann Whitfield. She filed it on day 4 of my hospitalization, and then she did something that to this day makes my jaw tighten when I think about it. She called my clients. She called the 2 commercial accounts that made up nearly 40% of my revenue, and she introduced herself. She said she was the new point of contact. She said there was a transition happening. She said they would be hearing from her going forward. One of those clients, a woman named Patricia, the office manager at Hargrove and Associates, a woman I had worked with for 3 years, a woman I had sent a handwritten card when her mother passed. Patricia sent me an email that same day to verify. It sat in my inbox for 3 days while I was still too medicated to reach my phone. 7 words. Just checking. Is this actually true, Samantha? 7 words that Gloria never knew had been sent. 7 words sitting there waiting like a small, quiet lifeline for the moment I was finally lucid enough to find them. I want you to think about those 7 words for a second, because the fact that Patricia stopped and questioned it instead of simply accepting the new information, that email is the reason this story ends the way it does. One person paying attention changed everything. Hold on to that. It matters more than it seems right now. Day 9. I was off the heavy medication for the first time. Tom had gone to the cafeteria. I had my phone in my hand and I was going through emails slowly, deleting things, half reading things, trying to feel normal. When I saw the notification from my business registration portal, a filing update, I almost scrolled past it. Something made me stop. Some instinct I still cannot name pressed my thumb onto that notification instead of swiping it away. The screen loaded. Primary owner, Gloria Ann Whitfield. I closed the app. I opened it again. I went directly to the State Business Registry, public record. Right there for anyone to find. Her name, on my business, on 7 years of Tuesday nights and handwritten cards and midnight invoices and $40 bank accounts and a Honda Civic that smelled like cleaning products. All of it sitting under her name, like she had simply walked into my life and claimed what was hers. I put the phone face down on the hospital blanket. I stared at the ceiling. The monitors beeped. Somewhere down the hall, someone was laughing loudly at something on their phone, and I lay there in my hospital gown with a tube in my arm, and I made one decision. I was not going to panic. Panic was what she was counting on. Panic was loud, and loud made mistakes, and mistakes gave people like Gloria exactly the room they needed to keep moving. I had watched her operate for 7 years. I knew her rhythms. She needed me emotional. She needed me reactive. She needed me to call Tom from that hospital bed screaming so she could position herself as the calm and reasonable one, trying to hold everything together. I picked my phone back up. I started screenshotting. I found Patricia's email and I responded immediately. I told her there had been an unauthorized filing made without my knowledge or consent, that I was addressing it through legal channels, and that she should disregard any communication from anyone other than me regarding Spotless by Samantha. Patricia wrote back in 4 minutes. I knew something was off. We're not going anywhere, Samantha. I held the phone against my chest for a moment. Then I texted my cousin Diane, who is a paralegal, with everything I had found. She called me within the hour and walked me through exactly what to look for, exactly where the filing had gaps, exactly where Gloria had overreached. The notarized document had been misrepresented. The signatures had been used outside their original context. It was not clean. It would not survive a legal challenge. But I needed to move carefully. I needed every piece of evidence exactly where it was. And I needed Gloria to believe completely that she had already won. She came to visit me that afternoon. She brought a fruit basket. She sat in the chair across from my bed and asked about my pain levels and told me not to worry about a thing and talked about my business in a warm, comfortable, proprietary way that I now understood for exactly what it was. I smiled. I said thank you. I ate a grape. Under the blanket, with one hand, I was already texting Diane with my next question. And I need you to stay with me here, because what I did over the next 48 hours while still in that hospital bed is the part of this story that I think matters most. Not the confrontation, not the legal process, this part, right here. Because the decisions I made before I said a single word to anyone are what determined how everything else turned out. For the remaining days of my hospital stay, I documented everything. Every filing, every date, every client contact she had made. I built a time-stamped record with screenshots and notes organized the way I had once organized client files. Carefully, thoroughly, leaving nothing to memory. I called a business attorney from the bathroom of my hospital room with the fan running so no one in the hallway could hear. And every time Gloria visited, I was warm and grateful, and I gave her absolutely nothing. When I came home and stood in the doorway and smelled her perfume and understood that she had moved through every room slowly and deliberately, I set my bag down, I made tea, and I thought about the fruit basket. I thought about the way she had sat across from me in that hospital chair, peeling an orange, telling me not to worry about a thing, while my name was already gone from everything I had spent 7 years building. I had 2 more days before I was ready to move. I used every hour of them. I cooked dinner on the second night, Gloria's favorite, baked chicken, rice, green beans, the whole house filling up with the smell of a family meal. I set the table properly. I poured water into glasses. She walked in and hugged me and said I looked wonderful, and she was so relieved I was home safe. I told her it was so good to see her. We ate. Tom was quiet in the way of a man who knows something is coming for which he has no preparation and no map. After dinner, I cleared the plates. I went to the bedroom. I came back with one sheet of paper and placed it flat on the table directly in front of Gloria. I sat down. I said, "I need to talk to you about something." And then, without raising my voice, without a single tremor in it, I told her everything I knew. The filing date, the document she had taken from my desk, the notary, the calls to my commercial clients, Patricia's email, every single thing she had done in chronological order, laid out the way you lay out a legal argument, because that is exactly what it was. She looked at Tom. For the first time in his life, Tom did not look back at her. He looked at the table. The paper in front of her was a reversal document my attorney had prepared. My attorney had already filed a separate legal challenge regardless. This was being undone either way. But her signature made it faster, cleaner, more private. I told her exactly that, and then I stopped talking. Because the person who speaks first after a silence like that loses, Gloria cried. She said she was only trying to protect what I had built. She said she was scared something would happen to the business while I was recovering. She said she had only done what she thought was best for the family. I slid the paper 1 inch closer to her. She picked up the pen. She signed it fast and tight, the handwriting of someone who wants something to be over before they can change their mind. She pushed back from the table. She said she needed air. She picked up her bag. She left. She did not apologize. If what you just heard made something stir in you, if you recognized any piece of that in your own life, someone who positioned themselves close enough to your trust to use it against you, drop the word strength in the comments. I want to know how many people are sitting with something they have never said out loud. Tom and I sat in the silence she left behind for a long time. He said he was sorry, not just for that night, for all of it, for the soft voice, for the years of managing instead of seeing, for 3 words said in a hospital hallway without understanding what they would cost us. I believed him. We went to therapy. We are still working through what this changed between us, because it changed things in ways that cannot be undone, only understood. The legal process took 3 more weeks. There were fees. There were calls. There was an afternoon in Patricia's parking lot where I sat in my car after our meeting and cried for 10 straight minutes, not from grief, but from the physical release of something you have been holding in your chest, finally letting go. Spotless by Samantha came fully back into my name. Every contract, every client, every one of those 6 women who showed up every morning. I updated every document. I have a business attorney on retainer now. The accordion folder is in a fireproof safe. 2-factor authentication on every account that carries my business name. I am not the same woman who kept her most important files in an unlocked desk drawer, because she believed that the people with keys to her house were the people who would never use them against her. But here is what I keep coming back to. The thing underneath all of it that I cannot stop turning over. Gloria did not do this in a moment of desperation. She did not panic and make a terrible decision in a crisis. She had thought about it. She had been thinking about it for years, behind every question about how I had things set up, behind every comment about what would happen if something happened to me. She had been sitting with it, waiting for the one moment where I would be too vulnerable to see it coming and too weak to fight back. And the people most capable of that kind of patience are almost never strangers. They are the ones who already have your spare key, the ones who know which drawer you keep your documents in, the ones who show up to the hospital with food and sit in the chair beside your bed and tell you not to worry about a single thing. I want to ask you something honestly, and I mean this genuinely. Is there someone in your life right now who asks a few too many questions about your finances, your property, your accounts? Someone whose help has always come attached to access. You do not have to answer out loud. But if that question landed somewhere specific for you, I think you already know what you need to look at. I do not hate Gloria, But I see her now in a way I did not see her before. Clearly, completely, without the filter of wanting it to be something other than what it is. She thought a hospital bed would make me small enough to step over. She forgot that I built everything I have from $40 and a car that burned oil and a notebook where I wrote down the names of strangers' dogs, because I understood from the very beginning that the details nobody else bothered with were the whole thing. I have never in my life needed anyone to hand me anything, and I was not about to start. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not because of the drama, but because of what it says about who we let close to the things we build. Sometimes the most important conversation someone can have is the one this story starts for them.